So like you, I grew up being told that polar bears are the only bear species that will actively stalk, hunt, kill, and eat humans. And there is a grain of truth to that, but it's also blown way out of proportion, and that's what I'd like to talk about. So polar bears live in what we consider ecological food deserts, meaning that food is really scarce and meals like seals through the ice are few and far between. So in other words, polar bears are under very strong selective pressure to investigate anything and everything as potential prey, which is why oftentimes humans in the presence of polar bears feel like they're being stalked or hunted. And in some ways they are, but the polar bear really initially is just seeing something moving out on the ice and it has to investigate because it doesn't know where its next meal is coming from, so it has to consider everything potential prey. And when we look at the statistics, they simply do not support the hypothesis that polar bears are these bloodthirsty killers that are hunting humans, because this paper found that when they totaled all of the polar bear attacks since 1870, between 1870 and 2014, there were 73 documented polar bear attacks on humans and 20 deaths. 20 since 1870. And that is across Alaska, Canada, Russia, and what's the other? Greenland, right? Greenland has polar bears and it's far north, right? So across those four massive, across all polar bear territory, there have only been 73 attacks and 20 deaths since 1870. That screams in the face of us thinking that polar bears are these bloodthirsty human hunters, because if they were, those numbers would be so much higher. So something else that this study found, and it's going to become important here in a second when I talk about the changes in bear behavior as a result of loss of sea ice and seal hunting opportunities, is that the primary bears that attack and eat humans are food-stressed, nutritionally stressed adult males. And that's important because studies like this that just came out show us that we are literally creating more nutritionally stressed polar bears every year due to global climate change and the loss of the sea ice that polar bears traditionally hunt seals on. So they're being forced onto land into closer proximity to humans, and they're really hungry, right? So this is a recipe for disaster. I mean, polar bears as a species are not doing well at all. Numbers are dwindling, again, due to loss of sea ice. But in addition to dwindling numbers, they're also being forced into closer proximity with humans to forage and hunt. And so inevitably, sadly, some really negative interactions are probably going to increase between polar bears and humans in the far north in the coming years.